Hello everybody and welcome to my channel. My name is Kayla Stugans. This is the second video in a series where I read and review books. Last week was a bit chaotic, but it's only because I wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to say or do or how I wanted to format the video, so it was just, odd. But I promise I'm going to try and get better week by week, That's all you can do. We're all just trying to get better, aren't we? Anywho, so the book I chose to read last week was 5 Feet Apart, and this week I'm going to be reading The Turn of the Key by Ruth Ware? Who knows? This book is about a live-in nanny for a rather rich and prestigious family living in a grand secluded mansion, and the child, one of the girls who she is babysitting or nannying, basically winds up dead, and she is thrown in jail for the murder, even though she is pleading to everyone that she is completely innocent. So this book is in the form of an epistolary novel, I think is how it's pronounced, which basically means the novel and the story or the narrative is strung together by like newspaper clippings and letters and like other forms of like media. So like emails and I already said letters, but just those type of things, not a typical here's chapter by chapter book, right? So for example, there's like little letters and it says what date it is, right? There's also like this like application, like advertisement notice thingy. There's a lot of things like this, as well as emails. Where they at? Emails, boop, 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 right there, right? So there's just all kinds of stuff like that, which I think is really cool. I love that type of thing because it, especially with a mystery or like a horror novel, it really feels like you're putting together the pieces and like you're like literally a detective, which is awesome. So the nanny, whose name is Rowan, is writing a series of letters to her attorney from her jail cell, trying to like convince him to listen to her case and to, fight for her, to, like do his attorney thing, right? She has 140 days to try to convince this random man, Dr. Wrexham, to hear her case, right? Now, the story is definitely set up to be a typical ghost story. A big open house, a big salary that doesn't really quite make sense, and, flickering lights, and 4 nannies that have retired within the past 4 months. Everyone thinks the house is haunted, like the town gossip. Everyone's saying, that's haunted. Don't go there. I mean, Rowan the nanny would even herself describe how she feels drawn to this house and she doesn't really know why, or that this job was meant to be and almost too good and perfect to be true, and she, again, doesn't know why. I mean, Rowan would end these long letters / chapters after just describing like in detail about the house or about the story and really start to draw you in, and then it would cut to her writing the letter to Dr. Wrexham again and ending the letter, which again lends itself to the narrative style that this book takes on. Rowan tells herself that she wants Dr. Wrexham and thus, the audience to feel the draw of the house and to feel what she felt, the house drawing you in. And this book really does suck you in like that. Like, I couldn't stop reading it. It was good, if you know what I mean. I mean, there would be times I would be reading and I would forget she was writing all of these letters and this story from a jail cell. You know what I mean? She was controlling the story, which you'll find out why that matters if you've read it, or at the end of this video, I'll tell you. Then, the next letter would start and it would be pretty jarring to remember that she was writing it from a jail cell and that, these events weren't happening as they happened. She was writing this all after the fact, after she'd already been sentenced, after one of the girls had died, after everything happened. So now, speaking of the house, I thought it was a really cool house. Normally when you read books or watch movies about these murders and mysteries in these big old houses, they're super creaky and run down and just scary. But in this house, it is like booming with technology. I mean, there's voice commands for the lights, and there's like panels on the walls where you can like turn the lights on and turn music on and do all this cool stuff with like panels on the wall for every single room. I mean, there's customizable showers where you can press a button and log in as yourself and it'll adjust to like your height and your temperature that you like, and like all these cool like different, I don't know, there's just so much technology that you're like, why would I really need that? But it's cool. The parents of the house literally made an app called Happy that controls the lights, and it has like a built-in baby monitor inside of it, which is like, okay, go off. I mean, it was literally called a smart house. So, and the front of the house was really Victorian style, so it was really nice and like older, whereas the back half of this house was, you know, defined as like blaringly 21st century. It was really modern and gray, which really set it apart from the front of the house. You know, Rowan describes it as feeling like it's two halves of a house, like someone just like dissected it right down the middle. The house has cameras basically everywhere, and there's only like 2 doors that have like regular locks. The rest of them are like touchpad locks, you know what I mean? And you know, the cameras being everywhere kind of rightly freaks Rowan out, because she's like, how do I know if there's not cameras in my bedroom or the bathroom or anywhere? I mean, this house kind of felt like its own character throughout the book. I mean, it felt alive, if you know what I mean. And the majority of the time in the book, we are confined to this house and to like the yard of the house, like the property, which, you know, adds a sense of seclusion to the book that I really appreciated. You know, you as a reader kind of feel trapped, which is really nice, because it helps you see what Rowan felt like she was experiencing, you know what I mean? I mean, as we read the book, we find out that there have been many people who have died brutally in this house, which again adds to the whole, ooh, maybe this house is haunted, and all the rumors that are circling around the town about this house being haunted are actually true. I mean, some scary things happen in this house. Doors opening and closing, unexplainable footsteps, music turning on by itself, lights flickering, keys going missing, just odd stuff that really can't be explained. You know, this house is set up to be this luxurious mansion with all this booming technology, and it's really high-tech, state-of-the-art, that, you know, both the reader and Rowan are tricked by it. But once you get further into the house in the book, you soon realize that this is not true at all, and that everything is not what it seems. You know, the back of the house is drastically different from the front, the technology frequently malfunctions, and the rumors of ghosts may be more than just rumors. And it's also really cool with the narrative style that you know from the get-go that this perfect life that she's living on this really nice house with these nice kids, you know it's about to end in a murder. Like a child dies, you know it's about to all go to crap, you know? Everything's about to blow up. So as you're reading, you're just kind of waiting for the other foot to fall, other shoe to drop, fall. Whatever that saying is, you're just waiting for something bad to happen. And it's fun to try to put the pieces together about, you know, who killed the child, which of the 4 children died, you know, who was involved, what happened, you know, how this seemingly perfect life ended in death. You know, why was Rowan put in jail? Why was the nanny singled out for the murder? Like, what made police suspect her? Why did they think she did it? You know, from the get-go of getting to the house, Rowan, before she even takes the job, when she's applying for the job, she sees this super cryptic note in a drawer from Katya, who is a former nanny of this house, one of the 4 that fled, you know, really quickly, that basically says, "My name is Katya. I am writing you this note because I wanted to tell you to please be," and then it literally just ends, right? Like, I would have been out of there so quick it's not even funny. Like, I don't play with ghosts. No. I would have been gone. But the reason why Rowan chose to stay in the end is, it's one of the big twists at the end of the book, and I will get into that later. You'll find out soon. And Maddie, the 8-year-old, one of the kids, she literally hugs onto Rowan and says, "You need to leave. The ghosts are going to get you." No. Goodbye. I mean, later in the book, she hears this piercing scream, which she assumed was on the baby monitor for the baby in the family. And when she ran back to the house, there was no explanation for where the scream came from. The doors that she had previously left unlocked were now mysteriously locked, and all of the kids were just happily sitting in the kitchen area, even though she had seen footsteps out in the forest, like footprints, and it just didn't make sense. None of it made sense, you know what I mean? I mean, in this house, the lights turn off and on and off without anyone touching them, and Rowan hears weird footsteps and like above her, which should not exist because there's apparently no attic. Everyone in the house thinks there's no attic, so like, where are the footsteps coming from, right? Again, I would have been out of there so quickly. Don't mess with ghosts, but Rowan has her reasons, right? Right? Okay, so now that we know a little bit about the house and the mystery of everything that's going on in there, let's talk about Rowan, the nanny. So the nanny is very honest. She just openly swears and openly admits she doesn't really like children, which is an odd thing to say to the attorney that you're trying to get to hear your case about you not murdering a child, but you are saying you hate children. Okay, but she says if she's going to tell this story, then she's going to tell it right. The good, the bad, and the ugly, which honestly you kind of have to respect, don't you? I guess. Like I mentioned before, she constantly talks about how she feels drawn to this house, but she also describes a sense of rage rising within her that she can't explain again. The first day she's at the house, I mean the morning after she gets there, Petra, the youngest child, throws like food on her, and she says she feels this rage rising within her that she couldn't really explain. And Maddie, the 8-year-old kid, Rowan almost snaps and hits Maddie, again, you know, feeling the rage. But she resists. Rowan then says, and I quote, "But I didn't hit her," which meant that, if nothing else, I had triumphed over my own worst instincts. I hadn't let the demons win. Not this time. Ooh, spooky! Spooky! I think the way Rowan was written, her character, was written very well. She was written as someone who makes mistakes. You know, she was not perfect in any way. And by any means, she was not perfect. But, you know, she was trying, so I have to give her that. And, you know, the big reveal at the end of the book, which, again, we'll get to, at least for me, took me very much by surprise. It was brilliantly crafted, I think, but more on that later. Now, let's talk about the kids. So there are 4 kids in this family called the Ellencourts, the Ellencourt family, right? And Rowan is in charge of all 4 of them. First, there's Petra, the youngest. She's 18 months and she's the baby. Now, she doesn't really do much for the overall plot of the story, but she is a constant. She's always, you know, Rowan's always carrying her, or she's always like crying and interrupting a scene. You know, she's there just to be like the innocent younger child, you know, that pull character, right? Then we have the next 2 kids. We have Ellie, who's age 5, and Maddie, who's age 8. I'm lumping them together because, you know, they're always hanging out together, and for those who have read the end of the book, you know why. They're so connected, right? You know why, and I'll get to that if you haven't read the book. Now, Maddie was definitely slower to warm up to Rowan than Ellie or Petra, but Petra's a baby, you know? Maddie would constantly make Ellie run away from Rowan or be mean to Rowan. And, you know, Ellie would sometimes get free of Maddie and be able to talk to Rowan and kind of clue her into what was really going on in the house, but then she would just shut down instantly and you'd be like, oh, great. Thanks! You know, she would quickly tense up and then just go back to being controlled by Maddie again. Rowan also described feeling drawn or connected to Maddie in a way, again, she couldn't explain. You know, a young kid with pent-up anger and emotion she couldn't figure out how to control. But again, if you've read the book, you know why she felt connected. And you also know that she knew why she felt connected. But more on that later. Now, the 4th and oldest child is Rhiannon, who is 14. Rhiannon was considered the bratty teenage girl who cusses and sneaks out and talks back and has a big old attitude. She's mean to Rowan and is kind of a jerk. She's painted as a jerk, at least. I mean, we go through the latter half of the book, because we don't meet her till like halfway through the book. We go through the latter half of the book thinking that she's just this terrible teenage, angsty teen. But we find out she's just blackmailing Rowan because she's the only one who knows about Rowan's scheme that she's putting on. And if you've read the book, you know where I'm going with this. But if you don't, well, hold on to something, okay? So Rowan is not Rowan. No, she's not. No, she's not. Her real name is Rachel Gerhardt, who is her friend in the book, who she lives in a flat or apartment with. And we see her talking on a phone to her and saying, "Bye, Rachel." And Rachel's like, "Bye, Rowan." And you think it's all normal and fun, but then you realize Rowan, or who I'm now going to be calling Rachel, is writing the story. You know what I mean? She can change what she wants. She's telling the story. All these facts could be totally false because she's writing it. You know what I mean? Rachel had used Rowan's papers, you know, all of her qualifications, all of her past jobs, like all of her everything. She had it all down pat except for the driver's license. I mean, she couldn't show her own driver's license because it had the wrong name on it. And she couldn't show the real Rowan's driver's license because it had the wrong face on it. You know, she was screwed either way. Earlier on in the book, literally page 50, when Rachel is applying for this job, she drives around, skirts around, having to give Sandra, who is the mom of these kids, she skirts around having to give Sandra the driver's license. She makes up some excuse where she's lost it and the picture can't come in yet. And at first you just think it's like, oh, some funny little thing. She can't give it. It's fine. You know what I mean? She's not perfect. You think it's like a play on that. You know, she's not perfect. She's missing something. No. She's just a whole other person. So, that's great. The way they wrote it in the books was brilliant, which it felt like someone was reading it right at you and it like telling you right to your face. Like, you'll know why I was fearful or whatever, because you'll know that the nanny arrested in the Ellencourt case was not Rowan Kane, but Rachel Gerhardt. And you're just like, excuse me? Like, it was brilliantly done. I did not see it coming. Up until I read those words, I was still like, I literally had to put the book down for like 5 minutes and just be like, what? Like, hello? But it was good. It was good, it was good! I mean, Rachel constantly says how she feels like her facade is slowly slipping away and falling out. But again, you think it's just because she's not the picture-perfect nanny that everyone wants her / needs her to be. But again, you never expect her to be an entire other person other than, like, different than she says she is. No, I never once, like, considered that. Ever. Nope. But, you know, the facade of her not being perfect is also very valid. Rachel says how she sees a lot of herself in Rhiannon. You know, both are these young girls who have parents who don't really pay attention to them, who are just acting out to get attention. You know, Rachel felt like she was never good enough, so she acted out to get her mom's attention. And get this, you aren't ready for another twist, and I was not either. I thought there was one twist and we were done. Nope, there's another one. Turns out, Rachel is treated this way by her mom because her real father is Bill Ellencourt, aka the kid she's babysitting, their father. All these kids, these 4 kids, are her half-siblings. That's why she describes feeling drawn to them or feeling like she's connected to them or that she sees so much of herself in these kids. They're related. When she applied to this job, she wasn't looking for a job, which again, she says in the beginning, but you think it's just like a quirky, I wasn't looking for the job, it found me, But she was Google searching her father to see what he was doing, where he was at, and when she saw the job application, she applied and got the job and didn't tell them. Now, in this book, there was a huge misdirect that I really thought this was going to be the death of this kid. Wasn't. There is a literal poison garden locked up in the very, very back of the property. Before the Ellencourts moved in, even like before that family before them, I'm pretty sure, there was a young girl who died because she like ingested one of the flowers and died, and her father was driven mad by the ghosts of the house and by his grief. And, you know, the person who made / planted this entire garden, you know, the same man who lost his daughter or who was rumored to have killed his daughter, his last name or surname is Grant, which is the same last name as Jack the handyman, which was later proven that he was not related to this man, But for a good minute, I thought maybe Jack was the person who murdered the kid. And to be fair, Rowan did too. Or Rachel. Sorry, her name's Rachel. See, I would always forget that her name was Rachel because she would always call herself Rowan throughout the book, and then she started calling herself Rachel, and I was like, who? And then I was like, oh, that's right. She's Rachel. Anywho, misdirect. I mean, Jack had a poison flower that Rowan had previously found in the kitchen in his room and took down like the ropes that were locking the poison garden that Rowan had put up earlier. She found those ropes in his room, in his apartment, in his flat. So she really thought it was him because why would he have those in there? But again, we later find out that he has a valid excuse for all this. And Rachel doesn't find this out until after the kid is dead and after she's like in jail being interrogated. So she really thought it was him, you know what I mean? So basically Jack had taken the flower because he recognized it for being poisonous and took it to his flat to like keep them safe, and then replaced the ropes on the gate with like a proper like padlock and chain thing. Again, to keep them safe, but it was a good misdirect. Also, I didn't introduce Jack, but he is basically the friendly neighborhood handyman who Rowan and him are constantly like flirting, and you know. But that's all I'm going to talk about him because other than misdirect, he doesn't really do much for the story. I mean, he does, but I don't need to talk about him anymore, so I'm probably not. Bye, Jack. All right. So there's like this second like misdirect subplot thingamabobber that's going on. There's this creepy locked door in Rowan's room that leads to a room that has another door beyond it, like a boarded up door that leads to a staircase that leads to an attic. Remember where she was hearing those footsteps in the attic? Well, there's an attic, but there's some very like cryptic writing up there, like get out, or like you're dead, or like we hate you stuff. But some things that she had heard the kids that she's taking care of saying, but there is no realistic explanation as to how they could have gotten up into that room. So it's like, where do they hear these sayings from? Why are they the same sayings? And you know, a creepy doll head from the attic somehow ended up in Rowan's lap, and she had no way, there was no realistic way it would have ended up downstairs. So she was like, how the heck did this happen? And when she asked Ellie about it, Ellie literally said it was another little girl, which I had said multiple times, which we thought it was referring to the girl who had died, you know, the ghost of her. No. This is the part where we get into how the end ended. And you know, how the child died and which of the 4 children died. And we don't even get this revealed to us until 13 pages from the ending. Get this, the child that died was Maddie, the 8-year-old. She had been pushed out of Rowan's window on like the top floor. And so, you know, Rachel was immediately blamed because, you know, she had come here under a fake name and was secretly related to this family. So the authorities thought, oh, she obviously, you know, came to exact revenge on her father who left her and his new family. But get this, Maddie was trying to get rid / kill Rowan because she was afraid that she would try to steal her father Bill from her like a previous nanny had tried to before. Holly was having an affair with their father Bill, and Bill was saying he was going to leave his family to go be with Holly. The kids were afraid he was going to try that with Holly and with Rachel because he had already done that. They had heard their mom talking about how he had already left another family, aka Rachel's family, right? He walked out on them, so he knew, the kids knew he would do it. He could do it again. It was possible. So Maddie and Rhiannon drove Holly and all the other, you know, young, pretty nannies away so that their father wouldn't leave them. And, you know, they tried to do that with Rachel, or at least Maddie did, but it didn't work, and she kind of resorted to like killing her with the poison berries from the poison garden. All right, now here we are, the big reveal of who killed Maddie, which, by the way, you don't even find out who killed Maddie until the very last page. The last page of the entire book. The person who pushed Maddie out of the window was Ellie, the 5-year-old. The 5-year-old kid pushed her 8-year-old sister out of a window. She said she was tired of Maddie pushing her around and she didn't want her to kill Rachel. And you know, Maddie was making her do all these things she didn't want to do and be mean to Rachel. Maddie made Ellie put the creepy doll head in Rowan's lap, even though she lied about that, but Maddie made her do that. So she pushed Maddie out of the window. And get this, Maddie was the one who wrote the cryptic letters, cryptic writings in the attic upstairs. She had gotten up there somehow and written the words and was responsible for all the footsteps that Rowan was hearing, or Rachel was hearing in the attic. And, you know, she stole Rachel's necklace as well. So that's cool. She was also using the app Happy to like turn on the music and turn the lights off and lock the doors. She was orchestrating all this at 8 years old. All of it was a ruse put on by an 8-year-old child. There were no ghosts. It was just a child. There were logical explanations for everything, which I really liked. I love that it was like, ooh, stereotypical ghost story. But no, it all had real explanations to it, which I thought made it very interesting, you know what I mean? I mean, Rachel always said that it felt like there were two presences in the house, one that was trying to kill her and one that was trying to save her, which turned out to be Maddie and Ellie, respectively, which it's kind of, I was going to say it's funny, but it's not really funny. It's kind of interesting, to say the least, that the one who was kind of trying to kill Rachel, aka Maddie, ended up being the one that died, and the one that was trying to save Rachel, aka Ellie, was the one who pushed her out of the window. She committed murder of her own sister. So now let's talk about my thoughts on the very ending. I thought the buildup of the reveals at the end was brilliantly done. I literally didn't want to put the book down the entire time I was reading it, right up until the last page. The character development was amazing, and they literally, like I said, waited till the 13th page to the end to reveal which one of them died and how it happened. And they waited to reveal who did it till the last page. And even then, it was in the form of like a letter from Ellie. The 5-year-old wrote it. And it was sent to Rachel inside of her jail cell. Also, the letter was super cute. Earlier on in the book, Ellie had been showing Rachel how she wrote with like the voice to text feature, where she pressed the little microphone and would speak. And when she tried to say Dear Rowan in her like thick Scottish accent, it auto-corrected to Dave Owen. So when she wrote this letter to Rowan, Rachel, with the same microphone feature, the letter started off with Dave Owen, and the whole letter was really like grammatically incorrect, which I thought was a really nice touch, you know, still making it look like it was written by a 5-year-old and calling back what we'd already seen earlier on in the book. You know, the big reveal of who done it was a wonky letter from a 5-year-old. Now, get this. I'm saying get this a lot, but on the page right before the ending, on the second to last page, there's this letter from someone who was remodeling the prison that Rowan was staying in. When they found all the letters that Rowan was writing to her attorney, Dr. Wrexham, they had found them in the walls of her prison cell 2 years later. Rachel had apparently hidden them, and we find this out right before we find out that Ellie had killed Maddie. So now you know that these letters had never gotten out to the public, never gotten out to Dr. Wrexham. They remained in that cell. And I'm guessing Rowan kept rotting in prison. Now, the end of the book doesn't tell us what happens to Rachel or Ellie, but I'm assuming what had happened was that Rachel decided to spare Ellie and not like throw her under the bus, and, you know, decided to take the fall for her because she really did love these kids and I guess understood what Ellie was going through. So yeah, the book just kind of ends with that open ending of Ellie just being like, I killed her. Please don't tell anyone, though. That's it. Honestly, I kind of like that. It adds suspense, and you don't know what's happening, and it's kind of honest. You know what I mean? So many people just go accused of something they didn't do and rotting in prison for the rest of their lives, and you don't know what happens to Rowan. You don't know if the letters, now that the letters are out, if they're going to read that Ellie did it and, you know, figure it out that Ellie did it and put her in jail and take Rowan out. You don't know if Rowan died. You don't know any of it, you know what I mean? So my final thoughts. This book is definitely one I feel like it would be beneficial to read twice, and I definitely feel like I'm going to do that. Maybe, I don't know, sometime I'm going to read it again. I'm probably going to give it a little time and then read it again, but I'm definitely going to do that. There are so many quotes and moments that I would remember when I was reading the big reveals that I would, you know, go back to and try to find, but I'm sure there are so many that I missed. You know, a lot of quotes that were foreshadowing the end. On page 231, Rachel said, I looked much closer to the person that I really was, as if the real me was leaking out of the cracks and the facade taking over. Again, We thought it was just because she wasn't this picture-perfect nanny. Nah, that she was a whole other person, but you don't take it that way when you first read it, you know what I mean? At least I didn't. On page 41, she says, and more than that, I wanted to be a part of this family. Well, she didn't just want to be a part of the family. She was. She was related to them. She wanted to, see what was up, what was going on. And on page 35, Rachel said, I had been so sure that someone would want to meet the person they were considering hiring to look after their kids. Remember, she had gotten this job solely to meet the father that had left her. And then she found out that he didn't really care about the ones that he had left her for, his new family. Like, he was barely in the book. Like, the mom took care of everything. He was barely there. I mean, on page 84, she says, you don't know the half of it, Bill. To something completely unrelated to like the whole facade thing. But then we found out that she's a literal whole other person, and the only person that knew about it was her and Rhiannon. Like, I am sure there are so many more quotes like that, and I can't wait to read it again and see them all. This book is probably my favorite book I have ever read. It was just brilliant from start to finish, and it read as a really cool horror suspense novel. I mean, I would recommend it to anyone who hasn't read this book. And if you've read it, read it again. You know what I mean? Read it again. And if you're watching this video, you've probably already read the book, but again, read it again. All right. Or maybe you haven't read it yet and you're just watching it, and that's fine. Read the book, please. You don't have to, but it's a recommendation. Read it if you want. Don't if you don't, right? Alrighty. Bye. Love you. Okay.